Hi, I'm Vanessa, and in this video we are going to roll out our hip rotators and our piriformis with the foam roller. Now the hip rotators in the piriformis run along the back of the hip. They go from the side all the way around the back, and one of the problems that can happen when these muscles get too tight is that they constrict the sciatic nerve, causing piriformis syndrome and sciatica. A lot of different things can cause these muscles to get too tight. Excessive sitting is one of them, as are certain sports activities, particularly if there's not enough stretching or release. So let's get started. You're going to take your foam roller and you're going to start just by sitting on it. And we're going to shift the weight into one hip and place the hand, I'm doing the right side here, the right hip and the right hand behind the roller. And we're just going to roll back and forth over the hip, and you're going to shift the weight a little bit more towards the outside of the hip, a little bit more towards the back of the hip, and you want to look for those places that feel tight and meaningful. Now, if this position is really sensitive for you, then you can just stay here, and also remember there are different kinds of foam rollers. There are ones that are harder and ones that are softer, so if this is too extreme, then you'll want to try a softer roller. If this feels okay, we're going to take it up a notch by adding a stretch to the muscles that we're rolling. You're going to cross the right ankle over the left knee, and then you're going to shift into the right hip. And you want to make sure you're shifting into the hip of the leg that is lifted, not to the other hip. And again, we're going to roll around in that area, looking for sensitive, tight spots. And when you find one, you can just kind of go over it a little bit. You can even rock side to side over it. And just breathe deeply as you're doing this, loosening up those muscles. And just look for any other places that might have some tightness in them. Okay, and remember, if this is too intense, it is perfectly okay to do it this way. All right. And then go ahead and take a quick break. And just note how the hip that you just rolled out felt compared to the side that you haven't rolled yet. You might notice a little bit more warmth, a little bit more circulation. I feel a little bit more aliveness in that hip. So let's go ahead and do the other side. Again, sitting on the roller. This time I'm shifting into the left side, so you want to make sure you place the same hand as the side that you're rolling on the roller. You can support yourself with the other hand on the knee. And again, just kind of searching all along the back side of that hip for any areas that might be sensitive. And if it feels okay in this position, we will try the position where we have the stretch. So crossing left ankle over the right knee, and again, rolling through the back of that hip, looking for any areas of sensitivity. Okay, if you do find any extra sensitive spots, you can just kind of oscillate over them, breathe into it. And we're going to do one more muscle before we conclude, and that is your gluteus medius, or the side of your glute. And I want you to think about, we have this big bone that sticks out on the side of our hip, and then we have the crest of our hip, or where we normally put our hands when we place our hands on our hips. And the muscle we're going to roll is in between those 2 points. Now I like to think about this as the side butt, or sometimes we call it the muffin top. And when you're rolling this, you just want to make sure that you don't roll over this big bone. It's going to be really uncomfortable, so you won't want to do it. And that you only go to the top of the hip. So what we're going to do is we'll start with the right side. We're going to come into a little side plank. And now that big bone at the side of my hip is right below the roller. And I'm just going to roll. This is not a big roll because there's not that much space. So I'm just going to roll to the crest of the hip, so the top of the hip bone down to that big bone on the side of the hip, also known as the greater trochanter. Now we're going to shift the weight back a little bit and forward a little bit. And this can be really, really tight and sensitive. So if there's too much pressure on the roller for you, you can put some pressure into the top leg, which will give you a little less pressure from the roller, or try a softer roller. And let's do the other side as well. So again, you're on the forearm to support yourself. The roller is right above that big bone on the outside of the hip. And we're just going to roll to the crest of the hip, or the part where you might put your hands if you were placing your hands on your hips. And back to that big bone, the greater trochanter. And then again, shifting our weight slightly backwards and slightly forwards. And again, if you find a really tender spot here, you can also just kind of roll back and forth over it, breathe into it. You want to press into the forearm. You want to avoid this position. And if you feel like this is too much on your neck, you can also support your head with your top hand. All right, so that is it for rolling out your hips, your glutes, and your deep rotators.